BBC News, hello, I'm Eileen McHugh. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has promised to reform the way Downing Street operates after a senior civil servant leading an inquiry into lockdown parties identified a serious failure of leadership and judgment. Mr Johnson has told MPs in his own Conservative Party that the government will publish a full version of Sue Gray's report when a police inquiry into the gatherings is complete. A number of MPs said they were waiting for its findings before deciding whether to submit letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister. The leader of the main opposition Labour Party, Keir Starmer, called him a man without shame. Our political editor, Laura Kuenssberg, says the Prime Minister has been damaged by the latest developments.
It's not so long ago that actually Boris Johnson was standing in the Commons saying, well, I think everything was fine in Downing Street. I think all the guidelines were followed. And yet here we are, a couple of months later, with an official verdict in black and white. This report may only have been 12 pages long, but it had one big, difficult, damning conclusion, that there was rule-breaking at the top of government while millions of us were following the rules locked down during a national emergency. Now the police will investigate, and several events that the Prime Minister himself was at will be part of those investigations.
The United States and Russia have traded bitter accusations over Ukraine at a public session of the UN Security Council. The Russian ambassador said the US was provoking escalation by falsely accusing Moscow of preparing to invade. His American counterpart said Russia was trying to paint Western countries as the aggressors to fabricate a pretext to attack. Speaking to the Washington Post, NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said there was a real risk for a new Russian invasion or some form of aggressive action against Ukraine.
What we see is that the build-up continues with more and more combat-ready troops, with artillery, with armoured vehicles, with more ammunition, with more fuel and supplies. And we also see that they are now starting to move into an increased Russian presence in Belarus, where they also will have planes and helicopters. So all of this together, of course, makes the warning time shorter and shorter. So we need to be prepared.
President Biden has told the visiting Emir of Qatar that he intends to designate the Gulf state as a major non-NATO ally, opening the way for closer commercial and military ties. Speaking at the White House, he told Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani the move was long overdue. The government of Peru has ordered a temporary halt to the loading and unloading of tankers at a coastal refinery where a major oil spill occurred 2 weeks ago. The oil minister said the suspension would continue until the Spanish company Repsol provided technical guarantees that there would not be another leak. You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. The Peruvian President, Pedro Castillo, says he's replacing his Prime Minister and reshuffling his cabinet for the second time since he took office 6 months ago. The Prime Minister, Mirta Vázquez, said she was resigning because it was impossible to reach consensus for the good of the country. The Israeli military says it's dismissing 2 officers and will reprimand a battalion commander over the death of an elderly Palestinian. A military investigation said the man's death showed a moral lapse by the soldiers involved. The 78-year-old, who was also a US national, was found dead after being detained by Israeli troops in the occupied West Bank in January. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has condemned 3 days of protests against COVID restrictions in Ottawa, led by truck drivers frustrated by delays at US border crossings. He said there was no place in the country for threats, violence or hatred, and that Canadians were disgusted by the behaviour of some of the protesters, who included anti-vaccination activists. A new scientific study suggests there are around 14% more tree species on Earth than previously recorded. Almost half are in South America, which also contains the highest number of rare species. Here's Helen Briggs.
The question of how many species exist on Earth isn't easy to answer, even for trees, which are among the largest and most ubiquitous of living things. Past estimates have come up with a figure of about 60,000 or so different types of tree, but scientists now think that's an underestimate, suggesting thousands of rare species unknown to science are still to be discovered. The data, based on advanced statistical analysis of a huge global database of trees, will be used to help assess priorities for conservation. Forests play an essential role in absorbing carbon dioxide emissions and regulating the climate.
BBC News.